Good morning, everyone. Thanksgiving is past, so we're into that season of waiting for the light to return. I am Kathy Desilets, and I am your worship associate this morning. I welcome and all of you to our church and to our worship service. If you're joining us for the first time, we invite you to stop by the visitor table in the vestibule after the service. There, you can find information to take with you about the First Religious Society, including a list of all our holiday services and activities, and about Unitarian Universalism. We also hope you will pick up copies of our ministers' sermons, which can be found on shelves near the front door. You can also find more about us on our Facebook page and on our website, frsuu.org. We encourage you to connect with any of our members or staff, or with our minister, Rebecca Bryant, so that we can get to know you. Everyone is invited to join us after the service for the coffee hour in the parish hall next door. I think it's that way. And those of you who have name tags are encouraged to wear them, both as a way to strengthen our community and as a welcoming gesture to newcomers. If you don't have a name tag and would like one, please ask at the visitor table after the service. On that subject, I call your attention to the announcements of classes and events listed in the Here's What's Going On section of our order of service. We have a lot of things going on now, so there's plenty to choose from, and it's a great way to spend some time during this busy season where we sometimes get pulled off course a little. So I encourage you to take a look at them, and thank you. It's good to be together.
Indeed, it is good to be together. I always love these services in particular that fall on holiday weekends or snowy weekends. I feel like we are in this intimate, chosen community. It is so good to be together. I also want to welcome those of you who are streaming in this morning. I know that there are several of our friends and members who are not feeling well and have emailed me to say, oh, but we can watch streaming in. So we're larger than our gathered even here. Our call to worship this morning are words from Denise Levertov's poem entitled The Thread. And she writes, something is very gently, invisibly, silently pulling at me. A thread or net of threads. A stirring of wonder makes me catch my breath when I feel the tug of it. You are joyfully called to worship.
At this time, I would like to invite forward the members of the adult choir who will light our chalice and candles of peace. Hello. Adult choir? Just the tenors. Okay. Thank you. I
They
was
sent the
confused.
best ones first. Check. Okay, all right. The words for the chalice lighting can be found in your order of service. Please join us in saying them together. We gather this hour as people of faith with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning in celebration of the life we share together.
Each week, we also light 2 candles of peace representing 2 places on earth that we lift up and remember as a sacred encounter with our world. There are untold numbers of places on earth that need peace. These 2 we especially hold close in this service and through the week ahead. After each candle is lit, we will speak the words for peace in English, Arabic, and Hebrew. Peace, salam, shalom. Our first candle this morning is lit for Coles Hill overlooking Plymouth Rock in Plymouth, Massachusetts, where every year since 1970, on the 4th Thursday of November, hundreds gather to commemorate what is called the National Day of Mourning, and to consider Thanksgiving from the perspective of Jewish.
People were shot early this morning in downtown New Orleans. 2 of them are in critical condition, says correspondent Pat Piper.
Police Chief Sean Ferguson says the gunman is yet to be identified.
There are so many people out here who are unable to determine who was actually firing these shots at that time.
They are, however, talking with a possible suspect. They cannot confirm any connection to the shooting right now.
House Republicans have been asked to name witnesses they will call before the House Judiciary Committee during impeachment proceedings, which begin Wednesday. On Fox News Sunday, the committee's senior Republican Doug Collins said he wants to call the Democratic chairman of the Intelligence Committee to testify. testify.
The first person that needs to testify is Adam Schiff. Adam Schiff is the author of this report. Adam Schiff has been the author of many things, a lot of them found to be false over the past couple of years.
A major winter storm is spreading from the Midwest to the Northeast today. Heavy snow is forecast for much of the day over the upper Great Lakes with blizzard conditions in parts of Minnesota. I'm Christopher Cruz.
Thanks for making us part of your Sunday morning routine. This is Bloomberg Radio.
We are entering
Listen
a
up.
time of year when the earth grows colder, the animals begin to hibernate, and the days become continually shorter. This morning marks the beginning of the season of Advent. In the Christian tradition, Advent is the beginning of the church year, looking forward to the birth of Jesus' spiritual light. Christianity is not alone in celebrating light at this time of year. Hanukkah, solstice, and Kwanzaa all involve candles, fire, and light as part of their celebrations. Each Sunday until Christmas, we will be lighting a new candle on the Advent wreath along with each of the preceding candles. And during Hanukkah, we will be lighting candles on the menorah. This morning, we light our first Advent candle as a symbol of hope and expectation. May we dare to open the dark places in our lives and memories to the healing light of community. With the power of hope, we express our longing for peace, and we prepare our hearts to be transformed. Please rise and bow your spirit, and let's join our voices in our opening hymn, number 38, Morning Has Broken.
That'll work. Yeah. Oh, no. I'll announce it first. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. I'm here to tell a story that dates back to the time of the Buddha, who walked the earth 2,500 years ago. I'm going to kneel down to be closer to you. But before we begin the story, I need a little help from you. You see, all the people out in the congregation, your parents, your friends, your family, they can't see you. And I want some of you to be part of the story today so that they can see you. I'm going to ask a favor of you, that some of you hold up the characters in the story. So, first question, is there anyone here today that feels like a lion? There's a lion right there. How about a rabbit? Is there a rabbit? Oh, there's a rabbit. And a deer? I think that's a deer. A gazelle. I think this is a gazelle. She was very fast. Those gazelles are quick. I think the next one is a water buffalo. No, that's a hippopotamus. Okay, is there a hippo? Hippo? First is first. Next one is a water buffalo. I think this red jacket. Yes, okay, water buffalo. Now the rhino, the rhinoceros, I think there. Next is an elephant. I think maybe, yeah. And a giraffe. I'm sorry, a zebra. Okay, zebra. And a giraffe. I think this side of the room, is there a giraffe? No? Okay, right there. Perfect. Reverend Rebecca, they're very fast.
Yes,
Yes.
they are.
Okay. You're the characters in the story, so now we can begin, all right? So a little direction. When I say the animals were all running, what are you going to do? Perfect. And when I say they all stopped, what are you going to do? And when I say they were shaking, what are you going to? Oh, so good. Perfect. Okay. The story begins. At the time of the Buddha, it was widely believed that the Buddha could take on any form he wanted. One day he might be a rainbow, another day he might be a tree. On this particular day, the Buddha took the form of a great but friendly lion. And he was wandering around the world through the forests, up on the high hills, taking in some sun. At the same time, there was a little rabbit. A little rabbit. The rabbit was playing under a fruit tree in a pile of dried leaves. But the rabbit was a little unhappy. He was worried, he was sad, and he was frightened. And he was saying, what would happen to me if the world were to break apart? Couldn't stop thinking, what would happen to me if the world were to break apart? At that very moment, an apple fell from the tree, and it startled the rabbit. And he ran. And he ran so fast, he ran right by his rabbit friends. And the rabbit friends said, where are you going, rabbit? And the rabbit said, we have to run. The world is breaking apart. The world is breaking apart. So they ran. And they ran so fast, they caught up to the deer. And the deer said, rabbits, where are you going? And the rabbit said, the world is breaking apart. We have to run. So the deer ran. And soon they caught up with a gazelle. And the gazelle said, why are you running? And they all said, the world is breaking apart. We have to run. So the gazelle ran with them. And they ran down to the river where they saw the water buffalo and the rhinoceros and the hippopotamus. Yes. And they said, why are you running? And they said, the world is breaking apart. We have to run. So they ran. And they quickly caught up with the elephant, who moves kind of slow. And the elephant said, why run? The world breaking apart. Run. So they ran. They encountered the zebra, then the giraffe. Giraffe on cue. Perfect. And all of a sudden, now all the animals are running. And now the Buddha could sense, still as a lion, something was going on. He moved to the top of the hill, and he looked down on the valley. And there, all the animals were running, and there was great danger because they were heading for a cliff. So the Buddha took in a giant breath, and he let out a giant roar. And they all stopped. They stopped in their tracks, and they were shaking with fear. Yes. And the Buddha came to them. And the Buddha said, what's happening? And all together they said, the world is breaking apart. We have to run. And the Buddha said to the giraffe first, because the giraffe is very tall, has a good perspective. What did you see that indicated the world was breaking apart? And the giraffe said, well, I didn't see it. I heard it from the zebra. So the Buddha turned to the zebra and said, what did you see? And the zebra said, well, I heard it from the elephant. And the elephant turned to the hippo and the rhino and the water buffalo, and they kind of shrugged their shoulders and turned to the gazelle. And the gazelle's usually a good source of information, but she said, I heard it from the deer. The deer turned to the rabbits, and by now all the rabbits were looking at the one very frightened rabbit. And the Buddha turned to the rabbit and said, what did you see that indicated that the world was falling apart? And the rabbit was still very frightened, and he said, oh, Lord Buddha, I was sitting there under the tree feeling very worried and wondering what would happen to me if the world were to break apart. And it happened. I could feel the world breaking apart, so I ran. And so the Buddha, in a very gentle voice, said, take me to the site. Take me to where the world is breaking apart. And so he helped the rabbit onto his shoulders, and he ran with speed to where the rabbit saw the world break apart. And as they approached, the rabbit was very frightened, and he was shaking. And so they proceeded slowly. And when they approached the tree, the rabbit, from high up on the lion's shoulders, looking down, he could see that it was an apple. An apple had fallen into the pile of dried leaves and made a noise and frightened him. And by then, all the other animals had caught up. And they too could see that the problem was an apple. And they were greatly relieved. And all of a sudden, the apple no longer looked like a menace, but a gift. And there was great joy. And at that very moment, the Buddha transformed himself from a lion back into a human form again. And he picked up the apple. And he took a bite of it. And he shared it with the rabbit. And it was delicious. That's the end of our story. Justin's going to sing us out. You can take the animals with you to the back.
It is now time for you to go to Young Church, and we will be singing you out.
You can take them to the back and
The December Collection for Cause is Community Action Incorporated's energy program. The program provides assistance with heating to people in need based on their household income and size to residents of the towns of Amesbury, Boxford, Georgetown, Groveland, Haverhill, Merrimack, Newbury, Newburyport, Rowley, Salisbury, and West Newbury. You know that need is great. As an act of worship, the offering will now be received.
Now is that the time in our service each week where we pause to remember the joys and the sorrows of those among us. This morning we are remembering Sharon Brohl and her family as Sharon's father, Carl Stetcher, former choir member here, passed away at his home Sunday evening, November 24th, surrounded by his family. We're also lifting up and thinking of Peter Francis, who has found out that he has a not good case of the shingles and is suffering in pain, and we're sending healing thoughts and lots of love his way. So too to so many members of our congregation that we know are suffering with colds and flus and viruses, and let's hope that they all can find healing and know that they are held and part of this community, whether they are here in body or not. And may we all also find health during this time ahead. We're keeping in our hearts and our prayers this morning our beloved poet, Rena Espaillat. She had a stroke this week, and after 2 days in Boston Hospital is recuperating at home. And for all of those joys and all of those sorrows, though unspoken, are just as important and loved and held. We lift them up today. Our prayer this morning is a poem by Wendell Berry. It is Manifesto, the Mad Farmer Liberation Front. And I invite you into a spirit of meditation, reflection, and prayer. As the poet writes, love the quick profit, the annual raise, vacation with pay, want more of everything ready-made. Be afraid to know your neighbors and to die, and you will have a window in your head. Not even your future will be a mystery anymore. Your mind will be punched in a card and shut away in a little drawer. When they want you to buy something, they will call you. When they want you to die for profit, they will let you know. So, friends, every day, do something that won't compute. Love the Lord. Love the world. Work for nothing. Take all that you have and be poor. Love someone who does not deserve it. Denounce the government and embrace the flag. Hope to live in that free republic for which it stands. Give your approval to all you cannot understand. Praise ignorance, for what man has not encountered, he has not yet destroyed. Ask the questions that have no answers. Invest in the millennium. Plant sequoias. Say that your main crop is the forest that you did not plant, that you will not live to harvest. Say that the leaves are harvested when they have rotted into the mold. Call that prophet. Prophecy such returns. Put your faith in the 2 inches of humus that will build under the trees every 1,000 years. Listen to the carrion. Put your ear close and hear the faint chattering of the songs that are to come. Expect the end of the world. Laugh. Laughter is immeasurable. Be joyful, though you have considered all the facts. Amen.
Our reading for today is entitled The Way It Is by William Stafford. I will read it through 2 times. There's a thread you follow. It goes among things that change, but it doesn't change. People wonder about what you are pursuing. You have to explain about the thread. But it is hard for others to see. While you hold it, you can't get lost. Tragedies happen. People get hurt and die, and you suffer and get old. Nothing you do can stop time's unfolding. You don't ever let go of the thread. The way it is. There's a thread you follow. It goes among things that change, but it doesn't change. People wonder about what you are pursuing, but it is hard for others to see. While you hold it, you can't get lost. Tragedies happen. People get hurt or die, and you suffer and get old. Nothing you do can stop time's unfolding. You don't ever let go of the thread. Please rise in body or spirit and join your voices in hymn number 1020 in the teal hymnal, Wayaya. Now I have my inspiration.
If someone had told me that pain was a prerequisite for joy, I wonder, would I still have chosen joy? Or would I have settled for mediocrity? Mediocrity of feeling alive, finding hope, experiencing renewal again and again. Here we are. Thanksgiving is barely over, and December is upon us. It is the season of light and festivals, including Advent, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, solstice, Christmas, and then the New Year. We are told by tradition, media, perhaps even our own selves, this is a time that we should be grateful, joyful, and glad that the season has returned again. I wonder, is that what you're feeling? Grateful, joyful, and glad that the season has returned again? There have been years when my answer to that question was a resounding no. And other years when I couldn't get enough of the traditions and the festivities. More often than not, it's a combination. And in the period of even a day, that can change dramatically. So wherever you are, welcome. You are welcome here. One of the recurring messages in my ministry is joy. I want people to know that joy is real, that we can experience it, and that we can help each other to do so. I need to share this message of hope, you see, because someone gave it to me. And that's how gifts are. We receive gifts, and those gifts that change our lives, we are called to pass on. Actually, more than one person gave this gift to me. Over the course of my lifetime, many people and many experiences came together and became woven into a fabric of hope. I know what it feels like to feel hopeless. I know what it feels like to feel hopeless. And it can feel unbearable. So the fact that I live in a state of joy more often than not today is truly nothing short of a miracle. And if I can pass along that message of hope, I will have lived to good purpose. For those of you who are experiencing that, hold on. And for those of you who are not and maybe have not ever, count your blessings. Perhaps I best start with sharing what the word joy means to me. As I have come to experience joy, it is multifaceted. The way that I've come to understand joy, it isn't necessarily an emotion as much as it is a way of experiencing life. It isn't something that we achieve, And we will not and cannot have an emotion of feeling joyful all the time. Again, as a way of experiencing life, it is more like a rudder to which we return when we waver, which we will. If we consider joy a state of being, a way of experiencing life, which I believe, by the way, we can do with all virtues. If we consider joy that way, then joy has many emotions. Joy may feel like serenity. Joy may feel like acceptance or compassion. Sometimes joy is exuberant. It is outgoing. It is loud. And other times, it is the most gentle, unassuming, and peaceful feeling there is. So too can we live from a state of being that is forgiving, or open-minded, or loving. I chose joy as our ministry theme this month, well aware that it had the possibility of being misconstrued. That's precisely why I picked it. Because I want to invite us to think more broadly about joy. So this month is about exploring the many facets of joy. It is not some ungrounded idealism. Therefore, we must grapple with joy's inevitable companions, including loss, loneliness, and despair. We can't know joy without knowing those things too. The depth of our joy is the depth of our sorrow. In the prophet, these words may be familiar to you. Gibran writes, "Your joy is your sorrow unmasked, and the self-same well from which your laughter rises was oftentimes filled with your tears. The deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain." He knew that joy and sorrow are inseparable. And the only thing that changes is the distance or the time between them. The key, then, is to find and remain connected to the thread or threads that lead us through sadness, darkness, or confusion back to a place of center, home, or joy. In Greek mythology, this message of the thread that guides us is found in the story of Adrian's thread that she gave to lead Theseus out of the labyrinth. And you see, at the center of the labyrinth was the Minotaur, right? And there, in the center of the labyrinth, which is often interpreted to be the monster at the center of our being or at the center of all journeys. I appreciate, however, mythologist and author Alison Steiger's interpretation. She describes the Minotaur as the guardians of the treasure. And for whatever reason, it does seem true that we must slay those inner monsters who guard our most precious gift, which is to say, ourselves. It is counterintuitive, and yet it is there. In psychology, they could talk about defenses, the things we put up to guard ourselves. And yet it is those very things that guard our joy. We can't choose to only hold back, cut off, and not feel some of life. This sentiment is expressed by poets, theologians, and philosophers time and again. We heard it in Wendell Berry's poem just this morning, "Expect the end of the world." Some could look right now at the world around us and say, I expect the end of the world. I fear for the end of the world. Or we could look at our own lives and know that death will come, right? Expect the end of your life. And then he writes, laugh. Laughter is immeasurable. Be joyful, though you have considered all the facts. William Blake reminds us of this thread when he wrote, I give you the end of a golden string, only wind it into a ball. It will lead you in at heaven's gate, built in Jerusalem's wall. The mystic Julian of Norwich, well known for the phrase we just heard in the anthem, all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. This quote is often misunderstood, and it's regarded as fanciful. All shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. However, when we read these words in her actual book, Revelations, it is not Julian who says them. In fact, for 13 chapters, she's arguing against these words. It is God who says them. And she is saying, oh no, don't you see? Don't you know? However you understand God, let me just say, if God is love, if God is goodness, if God is nature, if God is that feeling of oneness, if God is compassion, if God is the highest of human morals and virtues, right? If those threads are what return us again and again, it is what gives us hope. Because what is the option? What is the option? If joy is not contingent on perfect conditions and sorrow and joy are interwoven, the questions become these. What threads weave together to create a sense of meaning and abiding joy or purpose in our lives? To what and whom do we turn and return for a sense of meaning and hope? Answering those questions calls us to reflect upon and remember those times when we have felt great sorrow. It is there we learn the secrets of our joy. And in a few minutes, I'm going to ask you to remember a time when you were in emotional pain. I'll start, however, by sharing one of mine. This happened not so long ago, and it is not fully resolved. It is an easily accessed raw space in me, and it comes to visit me still. Maybe some of you will identify, and if not, you'll find your own memories, or perhaps you're living in it right now. So here we are, and I share this example because of the two-sidedness of this. My family and I were moving from West Hartford, Connecticut. Here's the thing, I had followed my lifelong dream and calling to become a minister. Here was the answer to all of my prayers and my biggest dreams. And I was overjoyed. And yet, even that required experiencing a tremendous loss and a lot of pain. I was moving and leaving the place where I had made the greatest strides in healing the wounds of my past. The people in that community were my people. They knew me, and I knew them. Over more than 2 decades, I had raised my children, formed deep friendships, buried more than a few pets. So too had I gotten sober, found my voice, created genuine community. And the self-same well from which your laughter rises was oftentimes filled with your tears, wrote Gibran. So what got me through that period of time were what I have come to understand are my threads. My threads, the things that wove together to which I returned again and again, are contained in 3 words: connection, contemplation, and community. I had to stay connected to myself, my vision, my faith. I had to devote more time to my spiritual practices during an incredibly busy time. My community held me even as we said goodbye, assuring me that all shall be well, that there was new community waiting to be born, and I was stronger than I thought. What are your threads? Bring to your mind and heart a time when you were experiencing pain, emotional pain. Close your eyes, look out the windows, doodle, but bring it fully into yourself. You may not have far to go. Feel the sorrow enough to make it present. Now look around in your mind's eye, look around that time period, and notice, what were the threads that got you through? To what and to whom did you return? Were there people, alive or dead, who you knew personally or not? Were there friends, authors, musicians to whom you turned? How about things you did that sustained you, made you feel some sense of peace or hope? Was there a favorite chair you sat in, or a place in nature you visited? Did you write, sing, dance? What are your threads, the people, places, and practices that sustain you? Taken on its own, each of these threads is important. Yet it is when they weave together that a rope is formed, strong enough to keep us afloat and help guide us back on course. It is risky to rely solely on one thread, one person, one practice, or one place. People will disappoint us. They will also surprise us. We will change, and the practices that sustained us will need to change. We may need to leave places, or the places may be changed by climate change. When these things happen, as they will, if we have a rope, then the other threads take over until new threads are discovered and woven in, which will happen even when we fear it will not. There is a red thread on your order of service. And I invite you to take that thread off your program if you haven't already. And hold the thread in your hand. As you do, envision the people, the places, and the things that sustain you. Imagine all of them inside of that red thread. And now take a problem, a sorrow, a challenge you are facing today, and ask yourself, are you turning to those practices, those people, and those places that restore you? Are you allowing your threads to guide you? Imagine that you can offer this current problem or challenge to these threads and see your problem seeping into the thread. This problem, this sorrow, and even this joy, it will pass. Your threads will sustain you. I hope this community is one of them. If you've lost hold of some of your threads, make a commitment now to choose again, to find them or discover them, to reconnect with them. And now I'm going to invite you to do something really brave. And I need to ask that all of you do this. One of the most important parts of being in community, in being alive and being a human, is knowing that we are in it together, that we cannot do it alone. So I invite you to take your red thread and to turn to someone next to you, behind you, move over to someone across from you, and give them your thread and take theirs. Sometimes we fear opening our hearts. We fear sharing that which is the hardest to bear. Sometimes we fear hearing truly how another person is. One of the most important threads that is there is that honest, open, genuine connection with another. You don't even need to know their name. Fear not, my friends. The threads, your threads are there, waiting for you to remember or find them as the case may be. For joy is possible. It is real, and it can be ours. Amen, and blessed be. Let's rise, embody your spirit, and sing our closing hymn, number 22, Dear Weaver of Our Lives' Design. forth from here, know that we go forth stronger for being together, that whatever we are feeling will pass. It will return again, and so